The next summer, Alcibiades sailed with 20 ships to Argos and seized the suspected persons still left of the Lacedaemonian faction, to the number of 300, whom the Athenians forthwith lodged in the neighboring islands of their empire. The Athenians also made an expedition against the Isle of Melos, with 30 ships of their own, 6 Chian and 2 Lesbian vessels, 1,600 heavy infantry, 300 archers and 20 mounted archers from Athens, and about 1,500 heavy infantry from the allies and islanders. The Melians are a colony of the Lacedaemon that would not submit to the Athenians like the other islanders, and at first remained neutral and took no part in the struggle, but afterwards, upon the Athenians using violence and plundering their territory, assumed an attitude of open hostility. Cleomedes, the son of Lycomedes, and Tisias, son of Tisimachus, the generals encamped in their territory with the above armament before doing any harm to their land, sent envoys to negotiate. These the Melians did not bring before the people, but bade them state the object of their mission to the magistrates and the few, upon which the Athenian envoys spoke as follows. Since the negotiations are not to go on before the people, in order that we may not be able to speak straight on without interruption, and deceive the ears of the multitude by seductive arguments which would pass without refutation. For we know that this is the meaning of our being brought before the few. What if you sit there, were to pursue a method more cautious still? Make no set speech yourselves, but take us up at whatever you do not like, and settle that before going any further, and first tell us if the proposition of ours suits you. The Melian commissioners answered, to the fairness and quietly instructing each of you as you propose, there is nothing to object, but your military preparations are too far advanced to agree with what you say. As we see, you are come to be judges in your own cause, and that all we can reasonably expect from the negotiation is war. If we prove to have right on our side and refuse to submit, and in the contrary case, slavery. The Athenians reply, if you have met to reason about presentiments of the future, or for anything else than to consult for the safety of your state upon the facts that you set before you, we will give over. Otherwise, we will go on. Melians, it is natural and excusable for men in our position to turn more ways than one, both in thought and utterance. However, the question in this conference is, as you say, the safety of our country, and the discussion, if you please, can proceed in the way which you propose. Athenians, for ourselves, we shall not trouble you with spacious pretenses, either of how we have a right to our empire because we overthrew the Mede, or are now attacking you because of the wrong that you have done to us, and make a long speech which would not be believed. And in return, we hope that you, instead of thinking to influence us by saying that you did not join with the Lacedaemonians, although their colonists, or that you have done us no wrong, will aim at what is feasible, holding in view the real sentiment of us both, since you know as well as we do that right, as the world goes, is only in question between equals in power, while the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Covenants and Kingdoms. I am your co-host, Brad, along with...
Hey, guys, I'm Nathan. Nice to see you today.
And,
hope all is well.
You probably know us very well by now. But we're so happy to be back, diving into God's Word and continuing in Genesis. But until we get to that, before we get to that, reminder as always, we are brought to you by Baba Java Coffee roaster, specialty coffee roaster and cafe, with 3 cafes here in Birmingham, Alabama. We provide ethically sourced, excellent specialty coffee in the Birmingham area and beyond. Actually, we ship our coffee all over the United States. So, but if you are interested in trying some of our fantastic origins and blends, go to babajavacoffee.com. Use the promo code Covenants to get 10% off your order. Do it. It's good.
And if you order 1,000 pounds of coffee,
that's a lot of coffee.
So here's the deal. We have lots of tariffs on coffee now.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So the prices are going to go up at some point.
Yeah. So get in now.
So if you order 1,000 pounds today,
We will give you the best price.
We will give you the best price, my friend. Just for you.
That's right.
Price for you. And Brad will personally deliver it to your house.
Personally. I'll maybe take your Mustang.
Yeah, we'll take the Stang.
Yeah.
Hey, you name the car, and we'll deliver it to your house if you order
In said
1,000
vehicle.
pounds. Whatever
Within
vehicle.
reason, of course. I don't know if
Whatever vehicle we can.
I don't know if we can procure a Bugatti or anything. If someone asks for
maybe. There's got to be some around, maybe Atlanta or somewhere.
that. Maybe. It's true.
Anyway, please order 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, please. All right. So we had a ancient Greek story for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with Genesis 26.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense, doesn't
They go
it?
together very well.
Yeah. So that was Thucydides and his history of the Peloponnesian War.
Yeah.
All right. And so we'll talk about why in the world we're talking about the Athenians and the Melians and the Lacedaemonians and all that stuff in a minute. That last line we read is the key line there. Okay, well, let's read that again. Since you know the Athenian ambassador is saying this to the Melians, since you know as well as we do that righteousness, okay, justice, the right thing, as the world goes, is only in question between equals and power. That's what the Athenian attitude was. Listen to this, while the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. This is the world's view of justice, okay, of righteousness and justice. Okay?
It is.
So what the Athenians are saying here, the Athenians basically what's happening, this is the Peloponnesian War. This is basically the Greek Civil War, the ancient Greek Civil War between Athens and their allies and the Lacedaemonians and their allies. You know who the Lacedaemonians are?
From Laodicea, I don't know.
They are the Spartans. Lacedaemonia is Sparta.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that. I'm sorry.
So it's basically the north versus the south.
Yeah.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
So the north, led by Athens and her allies, versus Sparta, the Lacedaemonians and her allies in the south, and they were having a great civil war that lasted for 20 years, the Peloponnesian War. And so this is part of it. This is part of the war, Milos. And every time I say Milos, I think of that Seinfeld episode with Milos. Milos, the tennis guy.
He's terrible at tennis.
He owns a tennis shop,
But he's
and he's
terrible.
terrible at tennis. Milos.
That's funny.
It was a funny episode. Go
It
watch
was.
it. So anyway, so Milos was allied with the Spartans. Okay,
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
they were a colony of Sparta, and so the Athenians were trying to get, because Milos is closer to Athens in the Aegean. Okay, so they were trying to get Milos to be part of their alliance. Okay, and so they wouldn't, and so what they're doing is going to force them to be part of their alliance. And so that's what this discussion is between the Athenian ambassadors and the Melian contingent there. And so what's going to happen is Athens is going to force Milos to be part of them. They're going to take it over, destroy the city, kill all the men, and enslave all the women and children. That's what they do. So that as you can imagine, being a colony of Sparta, that kind of ticked the Spartans off. So it did not lower the temperature in the Peloponnesian War. It made it and increased it by a great margin. Anyway, but the attitude of the Athenians who were trying to, they weren't really allies. It was more of an empire. They were trying to expand their Athenian empire is what they're trying to do here. And what their attitude is, which is the attitude of the world, I think the attitude of great states in general, great political states in general, is this: righteousness is only in question between equals and power, right? So righteousness is defined by the state or whoever's in power at the time. It just is. Justice and righteousness is only defined by those who have the power.
It's very Marxian.
It is,
in some ways too.
but it's true.
Yeah.
While the strong do what they can, they always have throughout history, and the weak suffer what they must. So if you're stronger, you can do what you want, and the weak must do what you say. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude of righteousness and justice in the world in general, and it always has been.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about what the Bible says about righteousness and justice. And it started with, from the very beginning, but we have a clear kind of definition, beginning of implementing these qualities, implementing these ideals in someone's life with the story of Abraham. Okay, we are coming to the end of our story of Abraham, which is really sad. Okay, but we want to go back and reflect on a few things that we learned from Abraham in his life. Okay, the Abrahamic covenant, we've talked about that in great detail, and we will continue to talk about it as we continue our discussion of the Bible.
Well, it continues to come up all the time.
And these ideals, these twin ideals of righteousness and justice, which we'll define that in just a moment. These twin ideals we will see in the rest of the Bible is God's plan. Okay, righteousness is defined by God, and justice is the implementation of that righteousness. So they're closely related.
Yeah.
Okay, and the way these terms, these ideals are used in the Bible are closely related. And we're going to look at some kind of scholarly type thing. We're going to look at some historical ways that people have looked at, like we did with the Athenians and the Melians. How historically, where do we get these terms, righteousness and justice? We're going to look at the time around Abraham and a little bit after Abraham, about how the world in general talked about these things. And then we're going to talk about how the Bible defines these things and how it's really important for us to understand these twin ideals of righteousness and justice. Okay, so let's read Genesis 26, and we'll start. We read this last week, and we kind of introduced these things. We're going to revisit this and kind of talk about that. So our discussion of righteousness and justice is going to be at least 3 episodes. I mean, we're going to talk in great detail about them. We're going to go into some other passages, and we're going to go into great detail. It's going to be a little bit more scholarly, a little bit more language oriented. So y'all hang in there, okay? Just we'll try our best to get through it and to teach you about some of the things and show you some of the things and talk about some of the things, the ways in which we need to talk about justice and righteousness and why it's so important, because the rest of the Bible is about God's definition of righteousness, what that means, and then justice is the implementation of that righteousness. Okay? So let's read Genesis 26.
Now there was a famine in the land, besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws."
Okay, so in the last verse 5, because, so this passage, it's the Lord talking to Isaac, right? Mm-hmm. And he's basically telling him the same thing he did to Abraham. Because I gave this covenant to Abraham, and I'm going to fulfill this covenant through you. You're the one that I'm going to propagate this covenant through. Okay, so he is telling him this covenant is for Abraham, and now it's for you, so you can pass it along. All right, so he's going to. I will be with you. I will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give these lands where they were at the time, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven, like what we talked about in Genesis 15, and will give you your offspring all these lands, and in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Okay, that's the Abrahamic covenant. Mm-hmm. Okay, and now it's the Isaac covenant. Okay, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Okay? So we talked about last time, how in the world did Abraham obey, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws? statutes, not statues. He didn't keep his
He didn't
statues.
hold the statutes. No.
He kept his statutes.
Correct.
So how? What laws? Did they have the 10 Commandments? Did they
did not.
have a codified law at the time?
No.
Well, how in the world did Abraham know which laws to keep? How did he know?
Yeah. Well, we talked about that last week.
We talked about it last week, and so we're going to just briefly talk about that again, okay? Because this is super important to understand. And the point is, and we're going to go through some of these passages like what we did last week. The point is, there was a standard already set in place. Was it codified? No. Was there tablets with it on it? No. Where's it written?
On his heart.
It's in his heart.
Yeah.
It's in nature. It's a natural thing
Correct.
that men know because God gave it to us. All right?
Yeah.
It's the standard. And that standard is called righteousness. That's what the standard is.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So God gives us this important description of Abraham. We learn that not only did Abraham obey what God explicitly told him, leave, go where I tell you, do all the things, sacrifice Isaac, take this covenant of circumcision, all these things we've talked about with Abraham in his life, right? He obeyed when God told him to do something. But also he obeyed his commandments, statutes, and laws. Okay? So there were statutes and laws that he had to obey. He didn't have a written version of it, okay?
No.
This is significant because it shows that the laws of God existed long before they were given to Israel through Moses. So this law, these laws, these statutes, this standard had already existed, okay? What is typically called the Mosaic Law was given to Israel at Sinai, right? Sinai.
Right.
This was according to Exodus through Deuteronomy. Some feel this was devised by Moses or only came into being at the time of Moses. Wrong. The argument is that if the law was brought into existence thousands of years into human history at the time of Moses, then it's not a universal law, and was abolished through Jesus Christ. Right? The verse we're considering today shows that this argument is false. The commandments, statutes, and laws of God existed long before Moses. God simply used Moses to record and codify these laws for Israel when they agreed to the covenant. Okay, many examples exist of this knowledge of God's law prior to the codification. We talked about this last time. We'll just go over a couple of them again. Noah understood that the laws about clean and unclean meats, Genesis 7. Okay, this was recorded. That law was recorded in Genesis 11. Joseph understood the commandment against adultery when Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, Genesis 39. Right, we're going to talk about that someday when we get to Joseph. God gave the 10 Commandments to the people of Israel from Mount Sinai about 2 months after Moses led them out of Egypt. This is recorded in Exodus 20. All right?
But the people, but we have, it would be dumb to assume that the Israelites had no knowledge of all these laws before
they
Moses
knew
showed it to them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
They knew it. So all these things happen, okay? We know that sin, the Bible talks about sin before the time of Moses. Genesis 4, Genesis 13, Genesis 18, Genesis 39, Genesis 42, Genesis 50. This is a long time before Moses was born. All those things, right?
Yeah.
What is sin? Sin in 1 John 3:4 is the transgression of the law, okay? It's violating God's laws, his standard. That standard is righteousness. Yeah. That's what it is, okay? Paul wrote that where there is law, there is no transgression, Romans 4:15. We talked about how the prophet Isaiah, and Paul quotes him, none are righteous, not one. Yeah. No one is righteous. Everyone has violated this law. Paul says in Romans 3, part of the Romans road, Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of, it says we translate it the glory of God, which is what it says, but it means that standard, God's standard. The glory of God is attained through achieving the standard of God, the righteousness of God, right? And then the wages of that sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord, Romans 6:23, right? So we have the standard, and we know that humans can't live up to it, all right? Throughout the prophets, throughout all the Old Testament, throughout the New Testament, the whole Bible is basically about humans can attain that standard of righteousness from God, okay? So let's read just a little bit in Romans 1 about what Paul says about what our standard is and how we don't have any excuse because this standard is already there. All right, so let's read Romans 1, 16 through 26, and then 28 through 32.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith for faith, as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world, in the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. They were filled with all manner of unrighteousness, evil, covetousness, malice. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, maliciousness. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, foolish, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Though they know God's righteous decree that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but give approval to those who practice them.
All right. So going back to our story of Abraham. So we see that this standard existed in nature. God created nature, and all his creation is filled with the evidence of his standard, this righteousness, okay? So let's go back to Abraham and see how Abraham knew this, and the Bible gives us a clue about this standard. The very beginning, it's not the beginning points, it's from the very beginning, but it's explicitly talked about with Abraham, okay? Mm-hmm. Remember Genesis 15:6, remember what we talked about after Abram believed the Lord, and what does it say?
And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness.
Okay, so this righteous standard wasn't because he did something. Right. It was because he did what?
He had faith.
He had faith. That's what Paul talks about. He talks about it in Romans. He talks about it in Galatians 3. We'll talk about some of those things later, but it's a faith thing. Mm-hmm. Human beings cannot do righteousness. No. We can't achieve righteousness through works, okay? Even in Abraham, from the very, very beginning of the Bible, first book, Genesis 15, humans can't. Even Abraham, the great Abraham, the father of many faiths, right? Father Abraham, he can't. He had to believe the Lord to achieve this righteousness, okay? It's God allowing them to have this righteousness through his faith, all right? All right, let's talk about Genesis 18, 17 through 19. Let's read that.
The Lord said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have chosen him, that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him."
So the standard, the whole reason the Lord, remember this is the story of the three men that Abram sees and comes and visit Abraham. One of them is the Lord, okay? and he eats with them. He shows hospitality. We talked about the importance of hospitality, and they're about to go and destroy Sodom because of what's going on there. And that's what this is right before they're about to do that, and then Abraham and the Lord have their negotiations. Okay, he's not going to hide it from what he's about to do, talking about destroying Sodom, because it's important to Abraham, because that's where Lot and his family is, right?
Yep.
For I've chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him. So he wants to propagate what? To keep the way of the Lord. And what is the way of the Lord?
Doing righteousness.
Righteousness and justice. Okay?
This is so clear about why God chose Abraham. This is the purpose, so that he would command his children and his house. It's to display his righteousness and justice to the world.
And his righteousness and justice is the standard. So that's what the Lord has for
all his people.
For all his people. The people he chooses. And the reason he chooses Abraham to do this, and he brings them out of Babylon, out of Mesopotamia, is so that this righteousness and justice can be displayed.
Yep.
Okay? Can be achieved through faith.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's his plan. All right. And we're gonna see systematically throughout all the Bible how this plan is achieved, and it's ultimately fulfilled in Jesus.
Amen.
Okay? All right, but let's talk about a little bit about the historical background and the cultural background where Abraham comes from, and then some of these other cultures and what people think about righteousness and justice. Okay, we saw what the Athenians thought about it with the Melians, right? Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the Greeks later. So some documents from the Western Semitic cultural area give us evidence of a hypostasis or personification of justice and righteousness in the names of Mishor and Tzedek. We've talked about that a little bit before when we were talking about Melchizedek, right? They're nominal forms of the root tzedek, justice, righteousness, or yisir, mishor, rectitude, making right. Okay. So Philo of Byblos, he lived 64 to 141. He was a Phoenician writer, and he talked about historical works in Greek. He mentions in his work Phoenician history, among other Phoenician gods, the divine personifications of justice and righteousness under Hellenized forms of the Semitic names, tsedeq and Misor. Okay, so tzedek and Mishor, tsedeq and Misor, the Hellenized, the Greek versions of them, right? Philo claimed to have obtained this information from the Phoenician writer Sanchuniathon.
Good job on that name.
Who had lived about the time of the war of the Greeks against Troy, so about 1200 BC. Okay, and had composed 3 works in the Phoenician language. About 1,000 years later, Philo translated Sanchuniathon's works into Greek. Unfortunately, the works of Sanchuniathon and the Phoenician history by Philo are now lost. We have other works by Philo, but we don't have the Phoenician history that he wrote. But we have a few fragments of Philo history quoted by the Christian bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, right? Eusebius is 260 to 340, all right? In the first book of his work, Preparatio Evangelica.
Great accent. Impressive.
These fragments contain a cosmology or an account of the beginning of the universe, okay? Allegorical cultural heroes and a theogony or narrative of successive generations among the gods and of the conflicts within the divine family in connection with the dragon and of serpents, which were regarded as divine beings. Philo's passages show a jumbling together of Phoenician lore with Greek mythology, Zoroastrianism, and other Egyptian beliefs. The sequence of the gods and their genealogy among the Phoenicians correspond to the patterns attested in the cuneiform tablets from Ugarit. Okay? So, what we're saying is, there was, among the Phoenicians, which became Ugaritic at some point, right? So the Phoenicians that he's talking about are basically in like where Lebanon is today, modern Lebanon is, right?
Yes.
And so some of the cultures there became the Ugaritic cultures, which we've talked about before. Okay, so some of these cosmologies and things got kind of mixed up together, and they got a little bit from other cultures also. And he wrote about this history of these gods. Okay, and part of it was tsedeq and mishor.
They personified them.
They personified tsedeq and mishor.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Why did Eusebius use the reports by Sanchoniathon and Philo? So there's this guy named James Barr who wrote a book about this, and so here's a quote by him. Eusebius, arguing against the paganism of the 4th century AD, wants to show that man was originally monotheistic and without idolatry. Polytheism and idolatry, far from being as pagan apologists maintain the natural and eternal state of man, were in fact innovations. It was with the Phoenicians and the Egyptians that these deplorable innovations had begun, and from them this new and false religion had spread to the rest of mankind, and in particular to the Greeks. Thus, in the first book of this Proponatio Evangelica, Eusebius quotes Philo not out of antiquarian interest in Phoenician religion, but in order to show how false polytheism and idolatry had grown up. And in the next book, he goes on to do the same for Egypt, basing his arguments there on the Greek writers about Egyptian history, such as Diodorus Siculus. So, tsedeq is not directly attested anywhere else as the name of a deity, but indirect evidence comes from the Amorite personal deity Ishtar, the deity Kitu from the Babylonian pantheon, and Western Semitic personal names. We talked about this before. The god tsedeq is attested in numerous West Semitic personal names. In the Bible, we see the god tsedeq, meaning righteousness, are found only in the personal names of these 2 Canaanite kings of Jerusalem, right? We had 2 episodes about Melchizedek, okay? Melchizedek, right? Genesis 14, Psalm 110, Hebrews 5, Hebrews 6, Hebrews 7. And Adoni-tzedek, right? So Melchizedek, we said Melchizedek means my king is tzedek, or my king is righteousness, okay? And Adoni-tzedek means my Lord is righteousness. My Lord is righteous, okay? Something like that. That was in Joshua 10. According to Genesis 14, Melchizedek was the priest of God Most High, Elyon, right? But the compound personal name of the 2 kings of Jerusalem give good reason for the assumption that Jerusalem might have been a cult center for tzedek in pre-Israelite times. And that's what we talked about when we talked about Melchizedek, okay? Is it possible that Isaiah and Jeremiah are referring to this tradition when they designate Jerusalem as the city of tzedek, the city of righteousness? So in Isaiah 121, Isaiah says, you want to read that?
Yeah. How the faithful city has become a whore. She that was full of justice, righteousness, lodged in her, but now murderers.
Okay. So we see those 2 words, justice and righteousness. Okay. Tzedek, the righteousness is tzedeq, right? Lodged in her, but now murderers. And then in 126, he says,
afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. He's talking about the restoration of Jerusalem there.
Tzedek, right?
Yeah.
And then in Jeremiah exclaims in 31:23,
the Lord bless you, O abode of righteousness.
Tzedek. Okay. The frequent use of these various forms of the root tzedek in the Hebrew Bible shows that this concept became central along with some other parallel terms. There is, however, no clear case of the term being used as an independent deity. In the Bible, it doesn't say that at all. Okay. It is rather a designation of the quality of God of Israel. All right. So, and we talked about this when we had our Melchizedek episodes. This is not necessarily, what it is a polemic against, it's 2 things. It's a polemic against any of these deities, and it's also ascribing these qualities of righteousness to God, all right? And there's multiple passages in which the term is used as a substitute or as a hypostasis of Yahweh, okay? Psalm 4:6, and we read some of these before. Psalm 4:6, Psalm 17:1, Psalm 48:11, Psalm 94:15, Psalm 118:15 through 16, Psalm 118:19 through 20, Isaiah 41:10, Isaiah 51:1, Isaiah 51:5, Isaiah 61:3, Jeremiah 33:16.
So these are passages where it's like saying the God of righteousness or the Lord is our righteousness or...
Yes, that's exactly right. So Jeremiah announces the splendid future of Jerusalem, just like Isaiah was talking about in Isaiah 1. In Jeremiah 33:16. Let's read that.
In those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will live in safety. And this is the name by which it will be called, the Lord is our righteousness.
The Lord is our righteousness. Yahweh tzedeqenu. Okay, so that root, tzedek, right there. So the qualities of the God of Israel are often expressed by the use of this parallelism of the term tzedek and mishor, mesharim, and other synonyms. Isaiah announces in 11:14, with righteousness, b'tzedek, he shall judge the poor and decide with equity. That's how some of the English translations. B'mishor, for the meek of the earth. And we have similar passages in Psalms 9:9, Psalm 45:7-8, Psalm 58:2, Psalm 98:9, and Isaiah 45:19. In Psalms 85:11-14, and Psalm 89:15, we find designations of several qualities of God understood very likely as divine personifications. The richest combinations of similar qualities is in Psalm 85:11-14. Let's read that.
Steadfast love and faithfulness will meet. Righteousness and peace will kiss each other. Faithfulness will spring up from the ground, and righteousness will look down from the sky. The Lord will give what is good, and our land will yield its increase. Righteousness will go before him and will make a path for his steps.
Okay, so steadfast love and faithfulness. So these are terms that are often found with tzedek in the Bible, okay? Steadfast love and faithfulness. Chesed, steadfast love, chesed, and emet, faithfulness, okay? Emet, and again, we'll go through some of these when we go through some more passages. They can mean different things in different ways. Again, just like when we're translating anything into English, it doesn't translate exactly right. There's other things we have to kind of figure out what it means, all right? So chesed ve'emet. Okay, steadfast love, ve'emet, faithfulness, will meet. Righteousness, tzedek, and shalom, right?
Yeah.
Righteousness, tzedek, ve'shalom, peace, will kiss each other. Faithfulness, emet, will spring up from the ground, and righteousness, tzedek, will look down from the sky. The Lord, Yahweh, will give what is good, tov, and our land will yield its increase. Righteousness, tzedek, will go before him and will make a path for his steps. Okay, so these words derive from the Hebrew word tzedek and the equivalents in the Greek Bible, which is kind of the root dike. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Occur very often in the form of synonymous parallelism in combination with other related words, or antithetical parallelism, where they have the opposite. All right, so righteous, unrighteous, faithful, unfaithful, salvation, condemnation, stuff like that. All right. Though words are basic units of semantics, their meaning cannot be stated in isolation, but only in relation to the other words, to the whole sentence proposition, and sometimes even to the whole literary structure. So we have to figure it out based on context. Okay. Okay. All that means just basically the cultural, the grammatical, the literary context. That's all it means, right? So we got to figure it out. Since the conception of the righteousness of God is based on the dynamic of a relationship between God, between Yahweh and humans, there's an existential basis available for the consideration of how the righteousness of God definitely outweighs evil manifested by antagonists to God's authority and sanctity. Close correspondence between the meaning of these linguistic and literary forms and truth conditions in which God manifests his power turns our attention to the passages dealing with the effective ways of God's righteousness in favor of the righteous people by subjugating hostile subjects and forces to this righteousness. Okay, a lot of this stuff we're talking about, sometimes I'm quoting directly, sometimes I'm summarizing, but it's in this book from Jose Krasavik, God's Righteousness and Justice in the Old Testament. Okay, it's just an amazing scholarly work. Okay, this is scholarly. Okay, so we're going to get into some of the. It's not weeds. What would we call it?
Gobbledygook.
This is going to be gobbledygook to some of you people. All right, and so we're gonna try to go through it. But this is really important to understand these things about God's justice and righteousness because it deals with everything else that comes in the Bible. Okay, all right. So the distinction between the passages dealing with the righteousness of God, okay, and those dealing with human righteousness is really important for the concept of the righteousness God that the righteousness of God is the origin, the ontological norm, and the basic model for the concept of human righteousness. Okay, human righteousness can only be attained through the righteousness of God, just like what we saw with Abraham, right? God is the center of admiration, reflection, and prayer for protection or deliverance from the enemies. Therefore, compositions using cognate words and their opposites are much more characteristics of passages dealing with the righteousness of God than in those dealing with human righteousness. Why would he do it that way? Why would the biblical authors do it that way? It shows...
Well, it shows the standard first.
The standard, and then what we are.
Yeah, failures.
It's the failures.
Weak.
It's how far away you are from the standard.
Yeah.
Okay? Just like Isaiah, there are none righteous, no, not one. God's righteousness is the standard. We are unrighteous.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the standard, and we can't achieve that standard. That's basically what Christ is saying here. Okay? The search for the meaning of the Hebrew word tzedek and the Greek word dike in relation to God shows that the meaning of the term covers such aspects as God's fidelity to the faithful people, God's steadfast love, chesed, saving help, Yeshua, and victory against oppressors. So the righteousness of God is an expression of God's loving attitude towards individuals, his covenant people, and the entire world, an attitude which is based on God's sovereignty and is independent of human merits, knowledge, and norms. The righteousness of God means the very best fruits of God's self-revelation and saving actions among humans, okay? And what we're going to see is the reason he uses righteousness and justice so often together is because we're gonna see that the righteousness, God's tzedek, which we've been talking about, the standard leads to justice.
Yeah, makes
Okay?
sense.
So that's why they're together so often. Okay, the righteousness of God, the tzedek of God, in the final analysis, is the distinctive mark of the Creator and the Redeemer, who is indisputably the beginning and the end of the whole of history. In view of all this, the semantic range of the word tzedek and its derivatives and synonyms and things like that is extremely broad and yet indefinite. In different contexts, it expresses various aspects of one and the same truth about God and the constant hope of humans and expectation of the manifestation of God's righteousness and the ultimate achievement of justice. The absolute supremacy of God means that God is the only object worthy of returning human righteousness and achieving justice among humans. Okay?
So this is very interesting because throughout history you have the exact opposite happening. We saw it
with the Athenians.
Yeah, we saw it with the Tower of Babel, people trying to achieve that righteousness on their own through either worshiping false deities or through their own personal works here on earth. And it continues to this day, of course, that's why we have so many religions in the world, because everybody's trying to figure it out or doing what they think is best. But they are, as Paul said, they have turned God's creation into a lie and worshiping those things instead of the true Creator.
That's right.
When it's very clear that we attain righteousness through God, through God's righteousness. So,
and we think we have it figured out,
right?
We think we can, even we as Christians, we know we can't. That's the whole basis of our worldview, our religion, our beliefs, our belief systems. But we act like we can achieve righteousness on our own.
Yeah,
And so throughout human history, that's what idolatry is.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So in Babylonian tradition, this concept of justice is in the deity Kittu and Mesharu, is a personification of the sun god Shamash. We talked about that with a little bit with Melchizedek. Okay, Shamash. What's Shamash? What's the root for that? And
Shem, which is sun. Yeah.
Sun, yeah.
Yeah.
So sun, Shemesh.
S-U-N.
Yeah, S-U-N. So Shemesh, in Arabic it's
Shems.
Shams. And in Hebrew it's Shemesh. So the name sun comes from this name of the sun god, Shamash, okay? Shamash is the divine overseer of justice. So Kittu signifies truth, righteousness, justice, and faithfulness. The cognate term is Mesharu, designating justice. So among the gods, it is especially Shamash who is the just judge. This explains why Kitu and Masharu appear in the Babylonian pantheon as personified characteristics of the sun god Shamash. Okay? The impact of the deities Kitu and Masharu was not nearly as great as the impact of the very ancient Egyptian goddess Ma'at. In Egypt, Ma'at was presented as the daughter of the sun god Re, the personification of the basic laws of all existence. The role of the goddess, so just as a side note, so Ma'at is the daughter of Re, who was considered the son of Re, Pharaoh.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just a side
That's
note.
right.
The role of the goddess Ma'at is so essential to the religion and culture of ancient Egypt that it occupies a central place in the field of Egyptology and opens important methodological questions. Depictions of Ma'at show that the goddess is embodied in two symbols, a throne base and an ostrich feather, to announce that justice, order, and truth in nature, as well as the social sphere, stand in opposition to disorder and chaos. In the middle of the picture, the pair of scales with two pans on the same level portray Ma'at in action. Pharaoh was perceived as the guardian of Ma'at, so his sister. Her masculine counterpart was Tot, who had similar attributes and ideals. Okay?
Interesting.
To understand ancient Egyptian culture, we must learn the language of images. Pictorial representations of the goddess Ma'at reflect the tendency to replace text by pictures. Okay, they did hieroglyphics, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they did. The transformation of these pictorial representations into signs and thus into text. Meaningful interpretation of the world through clear and memorable images was often superior to the world of texts. Complex symbols developed their own dynamics. The pictorial expressions of contents would always be enlarged by additional association. Symbolic representations of justice indicates that its meaning is never determined in one direction. By its nature, it remains open to all dimensions of justice in relation to the order of the universe, the social sphere, and the individual human aspirations. So, what does that tell us about the thoughts of the Egyptian concept of justice? It depended.
Yeah, it's not very clear.
It's not clear because it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Does that sound like
Which again is,
So how in the world
well, it actually sounds very Islamic.
would justice, how in the world would justice be achieved when it just kind of depends on the situation?
You're
right?
dependent upon a deity who can change their mind at any point.
Yeah, depending on your status.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on in the world, the way the wind blows, whatever.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that's not very comforting, is it?
No.
Okay. The cosmic dimension of Ma'at means that the various fields of nature and culture form a unity between cosmic and social orders. The Egyptian cosmic symbolism of Ma'at was based upon nature, an actual order resulting from opposing powers. Ma'at was mainly involved in the flow of cosmic energy and in keeping the balance of the microcosm and macrocosm, and relates to divine, cosmic, and human justice. Conformity with Ma'at brings harmony and happiness. The loss of sense of proportion or pride brings disharmony and unhappiness. Being the central figure within the Egyptian pantheon, Ma'at is represented also as a central symbol portraying ideas, emotions, intuitions, and experiences. Whew. So several have tried to find an abstract definition of Ma'at and to interpret her as an ethical ideal. Ma'at in action may represent the cosmic circulation of life in a simple and comprehensive way. The balance is obtained through the right circulation of Ma'at through the heart. Okay? Many Egyptian texts explain indeed that the heart is the organ that receives Ma'at and also emits Ma'at. So they didn't accept Jesus in their heart; they accepted Ma'at in their heart. Okay, this role of the reception and emission of Ma'at played by the heart is the way by which men participate and maintain the balance of the cosmic as well as the human world and free flow of life. So this is the heart. Is the means by which the cosmic and the human experience come together. That's what they're saying. Okay. At this point, Ma'at depicts a natural, automatic, physical, and cosmic law. Nobody makes a decision. They all watch the result of the scales. If the pans are in balance, this shows that life, Ma'at, circulates through the heart, and there's no need for any kind of judgment.
Interesting.
So, As for the sun, it makes all the hearts live. It breathes ma'at, and its energy enters into the hearts, while the heart is the root of life of every human being. The heart is omnipresent in Egyptian literature, and many expressions are created from it. The ancient Egyptian listens with the heart, understands with the heart, speaks with the heart, makes decisions with the heart, wants with the heart, and is guided in life by the
Heart.
He gives thanks to the heart, speaks to the heart of the sun and of the gods, unites himself to the sun through the heart, unites himself with the heart of his Ba, has a righteous heart, is under the protection of the heart while sleeping, and lives during the day thanks to the energy of the heart.
Interesting, because Jeremiah says something quite opposite about the heart.
Yes, he does. So this concept of justice appears to be very different from our own abstract and modern idea of justice. Okay, in Egypt, justice was a life process consisting of establishing or reestablishing through the balance between matter and energy, okay, the correct and harmonious flow of cosmic energy. It sounds very Eastern, doesn't it?
Yeah, very, very.
Such a concept of justice is valid on a cosmic level as well as a human level. It's adequate to speak of our abstract and modern idea of justice. The abstract idea of justice is, in fact, a great problem of the extremely rational philosophy and of the repressive social systems, but not everyday life. Religion based on prayer, art, literature, and music. In his letter to the Romans, Paul emphasizes that the human heart manifests operation of consciousness as a universal natural law. Yeah, let's read Romans 2, 14 through 16.
When Gentiles who do not possess the law do instinctively what the law requires, these, though not having the law, are a law to themselves. They show that what the law requires is written on their hearts, to which their own conscience also bears witness, and their conflicting thoughts will accuse or perhaps excuse them on the day when, according to my gospel, God, through Jesus Christ, will judge the secret thoughts of all.
Okay, so what Paul is saying is a little bit different than what the Egyptians is saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is Paul saying here?
Well, what we've been saying, that even though there's no codified law, the Gentiles have a law to themselves.
Okay,
And
that's right.
it's written on their hearts.
That's
what
exactly. It's written on their hearts.
Yeah.
So this law is so in Genesis. In Romans 1, he says the law. He didn't say the law. He says nature proclaims the standard of God.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
That no one is without, and we haven't said this, but no one is with excuse. You can't say, "Oh, I didn't know."
Yep. No. Oh, sorry. What about the people in the middle
Amazon,
of the jungle that have never heard about the name of Jesus?
So
Nature.
there's enough there to see.
Shows the glory of God.
Yeah.
It shows the standard of God. And if you seek God, you will find God.
Yeah.
Because He wants to find you.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's no excuse when you get to heaven.
That's right. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
And then in Romans 2, he says this law, this standard is where? It's not codified on tablets of stone.
No.
It's codified on our heart.
Yep.
We know the standard,
Yep.
right? So having the law are a law to themselves. They show that what the law requires is written on their hearts, to which their own conscience also bears witness. And their conflicting thoughts will accuse or perhaps excuse them on the day, according to my gospel, God, through Jesus Christ, will judge the secret thoughts of all. Okay? So this standard, according to Egypt, changes.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
It changes on the situation.
I mean,
through the heart.
And it's true of our modern Western culture. There is no standard is whatever you make it.
That's right.
Again, it changes depending on the person.
But the Bible says, and the Lord says something different.
Yeah.
And Paul says something different. Okay, so that's Egypt. Let's talk about the Greeks and the Romans. This is a little bit after Abraham's time.
Yeah.
But at the time of Abraham, there was a Greek culture. Okay, there was a Greek culture. We don't have culture of Romans, but we know there were people inhabiting it where Italy is now during this time also. And there was people inhabiting where Greece is now during this time also. You know, Abraham's about 2000, 1800, somewhere in there, BC, right?
Yeah.
We know they had, this is kind of the middle of the Bronze Age. Okay, this is late to middle Bronze Age. So we know they have cultures during this time in those places. They don't necessarily have written history or written cultures, but we know through archaeology and things that people lived there. Okay, and they had societies. Okay, the enormous impact of ancient Greek literature and philosophy on European culture in all periods is a special reason for considering the resemblances and differences between past and present perceptions of the world, gods, and humans. Okay, the thought of the early Greeks was indeed different from our own, but like ourselves, they were reasonable human beings and were able to take account of the basic factors that determine the condition of human life in a way different from, but not necessarily in every way less rational than ours. In Greek literature, the personification of abstract concepts in the form of deities is attested as early as the second half of the 8th century BCE. Okay, the personifications appeared first in poetry, the visual arts, and the realm of cultic worship. All right, deified abstractions were used in ancient Greece for many contexts. Okay, they had for our study, we're going to talk about the importance of these goddesses Dike, righteousness, and Themis. The word Dike, originally custom, right, judgment, justice, lawsuit, trial, punishment, and was employed as a regulative principle or symbol. The meaning of the term Dike in Greek religion basically is the order of the universe, and in the religion of the gods, maintaining this cosmic order. Okay, so this righteousness, the justice of righteousness. Yeah. This they do by working through nature and human mind and not by means of extraneous interventions. The notion of a cosmos, of a universe regulated by casual laws, was a prerequisite of rational speculation about cosmology, science, and metaphysics. The process of personifying the concept of Dike is connected with the authority of gods, especially Zeus, who is considered to be the only source of power in the context of universal cosmic order. From the beginning, man is not only a humble place in the order of the universe, and if he claims more than the gods have allotted to them, then divine justice requires that he be chastised, punished. The gods do not punish men so long as they keep within their proper sphere. A man who commits an injustice against another man offends Zeus in his capacity as the protector of justice, so that if the victim of such an act appeals to Zeus, he will not go without redress. Okay? So in the theogony, Zeus married Themis and became the father of Dike, together with Irene and Eunomia. Some authors identify Dike with Parthenos, Virgo. Dike was presented in her positive role as a goddess who watches over justice and immediately reports to Zeus all the unrighteous deeds of mankind, with the premonition that people will have to pay for their crimes and end in disaster. She was highly respected by the gods of Olympus and by many Greek and Latin authors. Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Pindar, Bacchylides, Solon, Parmenides, Heraclitus, Orpheus, Plato, Plutarch, Galenius, Halatanius, Julian, Libanius, Ovid, and Virgil, among many others. Over the centuries, Dike gradually assumed the most negative aspects of the Erinyes, goddesses of punishment and revenge. Since they had their residence in the underworld, Dike too was moved from Olympus to the underworld. So she became a goddess of the underworld with power over life and death. The last stage of her personification was her exclusive role as goddess of death. By contrast, Themis was the personification of everything that is right and proper in nature and society and remained permanently on Olympus. Pythagoreans even developed an idea of these tripartite justice. Themis wielded the scepter of justice in heaven, Nomos on earth, and Dike in the underworld. In the New Testament, Dike is found only 3 times, and always in the sense of penal justice or punishment. Okay, Acts 28:4, 2 Thessalonians 1:9, and Jude 7. The Roman equivalent of Themis and Dike was Justitia. Okay, all right. Justitia is very important, and we'd call her justice. Okay, so any courthouse in the United States,
you see the woman with the scales.
The woman with the scales. That's a Justitia, justice. Okay, that's who it is. Okay. Who personified the divine rightness of law and divine will. Since Roman times, Justitia has frequently been depicted carrying scales and a double-edged sword symbolizing the power of reason and justice. From the Roman period, statues and altars for Justitia have been preserved, and Augustus erected a temple in her honor probably after Greek models. The second way to use the word dike is the construction dikaiosune from the epic period. This term keeps the very close association between the legal, ethical, and religious senses. In Greek ethics, it occupies the place of honor among all virtues. Aristotle devoted an entire book to this word. Among early Jewish writers, Joseph and Philo of Alexandria were attentive to the concept of justice. Each of them has only one case referring to the justice, righteousness of God. Joseph uses the concept in his work, The Jewish Antiquities, and his explanation as retributive justice in the case of Haman in Esther 7, reporting that he was hanged on that very same cross, he called it, he had prepared for Mordecai. Josephus states, "Wherefore I am moved to marvel at the deity and to recognize his wisdom and justice, for not only did he punish Haman's wickedness, but also caused the penalty for which he had been contrived against another to fall upon Haman himself." Philo of Alexandria uses the concept of justice in his work on the unchangeableness of God, where he explains God's excellences as forming the unity of God. Quote, "If God's knowledge and wisdom and prudence and justice and each of his other excellences were not tempered, no mortal could receive them." Philo is an important interpreter of biblical theological tenets, both in conveying his view of truth and in the appropriate rhetorical means. We've talked about him a little bit before, too, how he kind of bridges the Hebrew Bible and some of the concepts in the Hebrew Bible with Greek thought. Okay, so the idea of the logos became, Philo talked about that a lot, okay? And it seems that John borrowed some of those things from when he's describing the logos, the word, okay? Remember, dever is the Hebrew, logos is the Greek, and it seems that John, and especially in John 1, when he says, "In the beginning was the logos, and the logos was with God, and the logos was God," okay? The Septuagint continues the great tradition using the group of concepts derived from the root tsedeq and interaction of the forensic sense and the idea of God's saving action. The same holds true for the use of the concepts in the New Testament. The understanding of justice and righteousness in both the Old and the New Testament is based on the relationship between God and humans. This personal dimension distinguishes the use of the concept in the Bible most clearly from Greek and Hellenistic ethics. In the Bible, dike was avoided as belonging to a polytheistic system. Okay? It appears as a metaphor for heavenly hypostasis reminiscent of the divine name in Hellenistic culture. Let's go back to talk about Dike a little bit. Personification of this goddess Dike administered by Zeus led to the assumption that Dike works upon humans through their own thoughts, feelings, and passions rather than through a transcendent divine participation in their affairs. The experience that no human life is without misfortune and the lack of personal reliance on the gods forms the background of the dominant role of tragedy in Greek religion and culture. The anthropomorphic representation of the gods in Greek religion may lead to the conclusion that human responsibility in relation to gods and humans is not taken seriously. In the Iliad and even in some other Greek literature, men may blame a god for prompting them to wrong action, but they may never disclaim responsibility for their decisions. Wrong action is due to the actor's preference for self-interest over justice. Even if the passions that caused it came from a higher power, that can never be pleaded as an excuse. Okay, suffering may help to bring about purification of a punished person, and a restoration of the order of the universe. Okay? But in no way forgiveness and reconciliation. Presentations of the nature of gods led to the conclusion expressed by Robert Parker: the gods ruled the universe because they were powerful and immortal, not because they were pure. It was in practical rather than theological terms that divine purity became an important conception. Okay. So, Greeks and Romans had a concept of justice, but it was a lot different than what the Bible says, right? So again, the personifications of these gods and goddesses and their ruling was kind of wishy-washy because the gods and goddesses were wishy-washy.
Very.
Okay, they were personifications, anthropomorphic, but and they acted much like humans, but just more powerful, right, and divine, right? Yeah. So again, you don't know what the standard is exactly.
No, because it changes.
So similar to the Egyptian standard.
Yeah.
But the Bible gives us a clear standard.
Yeah.
The righteousness of God. What does that mean? Okay. And that's something we're going to explore here in some other passages. Okay. And we're going to talk in the next episode, we're going to talk about the synonyms of tzedek in the Hebrew Bible. We're going to go through a lot of those passages. We're going to talk about some of those synonyms and why they're so important. And then we're going to talk about kind of how God defines his righteousness and justice. And then we're going to go into Isaiah. Remember, Isaiah is divided into basically three sections. And so we're going to go into Isaiah and we're going to talk about, because Isaiah basically, through the three sections, it's really beautiful. Through the three sections, he talks about God's righteousness and justice. And then in the last part of the second section and the first part of the third section, he basically goes through how God is going to achieve his righteousness and justice with people. It's really beautiful. So I can't wait to talk about that. So hang in there. I know this was a lot of me talking about history stuff, but I promise it's going to get really interesting. So let's go and talk about, in the next episode, we'll talk about, in general, God's righteousness and the justice in the Bible. And then in the third episode, we're going to go through Isaiah and talk about how God implements this righteousness and justice in different stages and how he is going to achieve that through his relationship with humans.
Awesome.
So
thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us. And we'll see you next time on another episode of Covenants and Kingdoms.
Bye, guys. Thank you.